Welcome to Cereals Canada's 2025 Canadian Wheat Crop Progress and Initial Harvest Assessment Update. My name is Leif Carlson, and I'm the Director of Market Intelligence and Trade Policy at Cereals Canada. If you're new to our organization, we are the National Not-for-Profit Industry Association, representing the Canadian cereal grains value chain. We are dedicated to supporting the cereals value chain, including farmers, exporters, developers, processors, and our customers around the world, with a focus on trade, science, and sustainability. We value relationships and work with customers, government, and other stakeholders to provide timely, expert, technical, and market information, all to deliver a best-in-class customer experience. If you have any questions around the information presented in this webinar or about the services provided by Cereals Canada, please reach out to us at info@cerealscanada.ca. Today, I'll be joined by experts from across the Canadian value chain to share an update about how the Canadian wheat crop has progressed, along with what we are hearing from our exporters on our harvest assessment samples. After this short video, our first presenter will be Mathilde Van Achelen, Market and Trade Specialist at Cereals Canada. Mathilde will be providing an update on Canada's spring wheat growing season.
We know Canadian cereals. Not those cereals, these cereals. The kind millions of people rely on for their business, for their livelihood, for every meal of the day. We're proud because Canadian farmers grow the highest quality wheat, barley, and oats in the world.
And we're not just saying that.
We have the data that proves it, because that's what the world needs. Information from experts who know precisely how to turn this into this, and this, and this. It's why we nurture relationships before the seed is even planted. Because when we succeed, Canadian farmers succeed. So do developers, processors, customers, and exporters in over 80 countries all over the globe. So let's keep growing. The best in the world is only getting better.
Hi, my name is Mathilde Van Achelen. I'm the Market and Trade Specialist at Cereals Canada. I am standing in a wheat field in Manitoba that has recently been harvested. Harvest of spring wheat is now complete across the prairies in Canada, so that marks the end of our growing season progress updates for 2025. Thank you for following along. We will be back in spring 2026 for updates on seeding progress. We'll see you then.
In this section, I will give you an update on how the wheat crop progressed in Canada. To provide some context, this map shows our growing regions for wheat. The gold area represents common wheat, also known as non-durum wheat, and the blue area represents durum wheat. In Canada, non-durum wheat is grown across the country. Most of the growing area spans across our 3 prairie provinces: Alberta, Saskatchewan, and Manitoba. There is also non-durum wheat production in eastern Canada, in southern Ontario, Quebec, and the Atlantic provinces. Durum production is concentrated in the southeast of Alberta and the southwest of Saskatchewan. Let's take a closer look at non-durum wheat. The prairie provinces produce the bulk of our non-durum wheat, and about 10% is grown in eastern Canada. On average, over 90% of the non-durum wheat we produce is spring wheat. Eastern Canada specializes in the production of soft winter wheat, which is planted in the fall and harvested the next summer. Production of durum wheat is concentrated on the prairies. Saskatchewan produces 81% of Canadian durum, and the remaining 19% is grown in Alberta. This visual shows a typical growing season for spring wheat and durum wheat in Canada. Producers can typically start planting around the end of April or early May once the snow has melted. The crops grow throughout the summer months, and harvest can start as early as mid-August. As I am recording this segment, the harvest of spring wheat and durum is nearly complete in Western Canada. Now let's go back to the beginning of the growing season. This chart shows the estimated seeded area by crop, with data from Statistics Canada, which is our national statistics agency. When seeding was complete in June, Statistics Canada surveyed farmers to ask them about the areas they seeded by crop. Based on this estimate, Canadian farmers planted nearly 8.3 million hectares of non-durum wheat this year, a 0.5% increase from last year. The durum wheat area has increased by 2.6% to over 2.6 million hectares. It's important to keep in mind that Canadian farmers choose which crops they grow, and they typically grow different crops in rotations. Farmers decide what to plant based on the characteristics of their land and what they expect will be profitable. So although there are small fluctuations in the area seeded to wheat year over year, wheat is consistently the largest field crop grown in Canada. This reflects a strong demand for Canadian wheat on the global market. In addition to the seeded area, the weather plays an important role in the forecast for production. In June and July, which is an important period for crop development, precipitation was variable across the prairies. Central Alberta and Western Saskatchewan received above average or average volumes of rainfall. These are the green and blue areas on the map. Other areas, like Northern Alberta and Manitoba, received lower than average levels of rainfall. These are the yellow, orange, and red areas. Overall, there was more rain in July than in June, and in many regions, crop conditions improved over the course of the summer. Especially during the last 2 weeks of July, there was significant rainfall along the southern border of the growing region. This was beneficial for grain filling and crop conditions in later seeded crops. The Canadian wheat crop is not irrigated and relies on rainfall. Fortunately, even smaller amounts of rain received at the right times can set the crop up for success because of improvements in crop genetics and agronomic practices. During the month of July, we experienced slightly lower than average temperatures across the prairies. This also helped to mitigate the impact of dry conditions in those areas that received less rainfall. Southern Ontario, where most of Canada's winter wheat is grown, experienced average precipitation in the 2 months leading up to harvest, which is a critical time for crop development. Ontario had a larger seeded area this year and experienced favorable weather during the planting and harvest periods. This resulted in increased production. Throughout the growing season, we tracked the condition of spring wheat and we publish this information on our website. We get data on crop conditions from the provincial governments every other week leading up to the harvest stage. The last time all 3 prairie provinces reported on crop conditions was in early August. This map shows the percentages of spring wheat rated good to excellent for each growing region in the prairie provinces as of August 5th. Good to excellent means that the crop is likely to achieve yields that are average or above average. Crop conditions were graded the lowest in the Peace region in Alberta and in northwestern Saskatchewan, where farmers experienced particularly dry conditions. While I am recording this presentation, we are nearing completion of spring wheat harvest across the prairies. This year, harvest started out slower due to rainfall in August, but the pace picked up with drier weather in September, especially in the western half of the growing region. As of October 3rd, the spring wheat harvest is nearly complete. Statistics Canada recently published a production forecast based on the seeded area per crop and the current yield estimates, which are based on satellite imagery and agroclimatic data. The 2025 wheat crop is expected to reach over 36.6 million tons, which would be a 2% increase from last year and 13% higher than the 5-year average of 32.4 million tons. This increase in production is due to a larger seeded area and higher yields. Non-durum wheat production is forecast at 30.1 million tons, a 1.9% increase from last year. Production of spring wheat, which is mostly grown in Western Canada, is expected to remain steady at 26.6 million tons. Production of winter wheat, which is mostly grown in Southern Ontario, is forecast to reach 3.5 million tons, an increase of 14.4%. Durum wheat production is forecast to increase by 2.4% to reach 6.5 million tons. This slide shows the most recent supply and disposition forecast by Agriculture and Agri-Food Canada. It shows the forecast for the 2025-2026 crop year compared to the previous crop year, which ended on July 31st of this year. This year, AAFC forecasts a slightly lower supply of non-durum wheat, despite larger production, due to lower carrying stocks. Domestic use is expected to increase because of higher consumption for feed purposes. Exports are anticipated to decrease from last year's record level, but they would still be larger than average at 22 million tons. For durum wheat, supplies are expected to remain relatively steady. Domestic use is anticipated to increase due to higher feed consumption. This would be offset by a lower export volume. AAFC anticipates that shipments to Europe and North Africa will be reduced this crop year, since domestic production was higher in these regions. The supply and disposition forecast will continue to be refined as more harvest data is released. At Cereals Canada, we keep a close eye on the harvest progress. Every other week, we update the crop report summaries on our website to give you up-to-date information on how the crop is progressing. After this webinar, I encourage you to visit the Growing Season Progress Report at cerealscanada.ca to see the timeline of this year's crop production and harvest. Historical information for the last 5 years is also available on the page for your convenience. Of course, you are welcome to reach out to us if you have any questions. Now that we've covered the outlook for this year's wheat crop, I imagine you are eager to find out more about the crop quality. Later on in this webinar, you will hear from my colleague Lindsay Boyd, Technical Specialist Projects. She will share her insights into the ongoing quality assessment of this year's wheat harvest. Thank you, and back to you, Leif.
Thanks for sharing that, Matilda. The Canadian system maintains strong requirements for variety registration, production practices, and quality assurance. The system showed its value again this year as we look forward to what's hopefully a high-quality crop in a growing season that did have some challenges in some locations. A key link in the Canadian cereals value chain are the farmers who work hard to uphold Canada's reputation for high-quality, consistent, and sustainably grown cereal grains. Today, I'm happy to be joined by two farmers representing Western and Eastern Canada, Scott Jesperson, who grows spring wheat in Alberta, and Josh Borson, who grows soft red winter wheat in Ontario. We spoke with them earlier in the year, and it's great to have them back. Both have been busy bringing in this year's harvest, but we're lucky to have some time to get them off the field and speak with us today.
Welcome, Scott, and welcome, Josh. Thanks for joining us again.
Thanks for having us.
I guess let's start with talking a bit about yourselves and your farming operations. Scott, I'll let you go first. Tell us a little bit about your farm and where you farm.
Yeah, good morning. We farm in Western Canada, just 20 minutes east of Edmonton or west of Edmonton in a town called Spruce Grove. Our farm has been in the family for well over 100 years. I farm with my son Ryan and my dad, and we have five crops that we grow. We grow spring wheat, barley, oats, peas, and canola. And we do a bunch of alfalfa and grass hay as well. And we have about 150 beef cows as well.
A real mixed farm.
Yeah.
Josh, tell us about your farm.
Thanks, Leif. I farm with my family as well. It's a third generation where we currently are. My grandparents immigrated in the 50s from Holland, actually. So we've been in the country for 75 years almost now, but farming with my family in the southwestern Ontario region of the country, which is located in the Great Lakes Basin, and with that we get a lot of different climate than maybe our Western Canadian farmers enjoy. And we actually are far enough south in the country that we line up pretty close to California, actually, like from a latitude point of view, which is unique to Canada. And I'm a third generation. I think I mentioned I farm with my dad, and I have some young kids here that are up and coming, perhaps, but they are too young to be considered full-time farmers by any means at this time.
It's a great opportunity for them to get to grow up on a farm and live that life. So I'm glad to hear that there's a next generation that's part of the picture. We when we spoke to you earlier in the growing season, one of the other differences, of course, between spring wheat and winter wheat. So, Scott, when we spoke last time, you had just finished seeding, and Josh's crop was out of dormancy and growing. But between then and now, both of you have seen that final result and already harvested your crop. How would you describe this year's crop compared to last? Josh, I'll start with you in Ontario.
Well, thanks, Leif. We've been having pretty consistent crops for the last few years in Ontario, or especially where we are. But it was one of the best wheat crops in the province, more holistically. I think one of the top or key kind of agronomists in the region mentioned that we cracked the 100 bushel average yield across the province mark for the first time in history. So I would say overall it was a very good crop. For us, it wasn't a record crop, but it was very consistent. And the key thing for the customers that are maybe here today is that quality's been very, very good. I was at some export terminals, kind of just as harvest was maybe in the mid portion with a bit of a trade mission, and the exporters there were quite happy with the quality they were receiving. And I think that the customers receiving those shipments of wheat will be very happy with what they are purchasing. It looked very good, and definitely all the key characteristics that matter to the bakers around the world were definitely there.
That's really good to hear. It's always a win-win for that's something that farmers and customers have in common is that desire to get a good volume with good quality. As we move west and nestle up to the Rocky Mountains, Scott, how did harvest go for you?
Yeah, thanks, Leif. I'd have to kind of echo what Josh said. It started off excellent. We had great growing conditions in the spring. The wheat crop came up well, and then those growing conditions just continued right through the whole season. And we had really excellent wheat crops this year in our area. Probably some of the best we've had. The quality is excellent. The yield was high. Um, yeah, and we didn't even have to really put it through any of the dryers that we normally do. It came off dry. I think probably the protein is probably one of the better that we've had. So we're looking forward to that. I think it'll be a crop that the buyers are gonna like to have. And yeah, it was just an absolute excellent growing season for us in this area.
Again, that's really good to hear. I think I think our customers have a sense of, what they want the wheat to look like when it's off the field and in the bin. But for you two as farmers, working the land and managing these operations, we hear about what's a good harvest. We hear about it was a good harvest season. What does a good harvest season, or what are some of the aspects that make a harvest a good harvest? From the operator's perspective. Scott, I'll let you go first on this one.
Well, I guess I'm going to say if the weather cooperates, the harvest is actually quite enjoyable. There's not as much stress. You don't have to, put the grain or the wheat, through the dryer. You can just go out and combine. This year, we probably started sometime in our wheat crop in about the middle of August, and we had 30 days of absolutely beautiful weather. We combined in the sunshine, and we never really had to worry about stopping, due to the weather. Equipment worked well. The crop just came off absolutely beautiful. Um, I guess you can kind of gauge how good the crop is if farmers are buying grain bins, and that happened in our area. There was a lot of supply, so the yield was really good.
Def
I'm just going to reiterate that if the weather cooperates, the harvest is quite enjoyable.
One of the things that we get to talk about when customers come to visit us in Canada is the way that farmers here are store a lot of their own grain and work to make sure that it's in condition. It's one of the advantages we have with our cold our cold winters is it's good for storing grain.
Yeah.
Josh, from your perspective, is a good harvest season, a lot of that about weather?
Well, like it or not, for farmers, the weather kind of dictates a lot of what we can do and what we can grow and how it goes. So much like Scott mentioned, our harvest season, I think, was very similar from the wheat crop point of view. In Ontario, with a different crop rotation, that provided some challenges for our other crops, but truly made a really nice harvest window. I know at the time when we were harvesting, which was, more in July of this year, harvest was a bit earlier and advanced because we started to dry out into late June, and we had such a dry summer. But that allowed for an incredible harvest pace. There's no question. One of the local inland elevators that we deal with that would handle a significant amount of grain was taking in, I think, 6,000 tons a day at the peak of harvest. He was running through significant throughput, filling bins incredibly fast. And logistically, we were able to move things along. And that's probably the biggest bottleneck when harvest can proceed at that pace, is being able to find a home for that grain quickly as well. And I would say I heard very few issues about bottlenecks or challenges that way. The harvest was seamless because we were able to either store it on farm, or the elevators that we would deal with were able to handle it at that pace. And the good weather definitely contributed to that. I think actually at some point, some of the elevators were hoping for a shower, perhaps just to catch up on a few things, some paperwork maybe, or some things that got set aside during harvest. But realistically, overall, most of the same things that Scott, enjoys about harvest, we do as well. A few equipment issues, consistent quality, and a nice pace that we can just continually work through it. And especially in Ontario, I can't speak for the Western Canadian farmers, but we are often getting rains in the summer, and they can be quite heavy storms. There was some hail damage locally, things like that can really impact your harvest, but it also can significantly impact your quality as well for us. If we can't harvest that grain in a timely manner and we get a significant amount of rain, that really deteriorates quality fast. And without that rain this summer, that really contributed to the high quality grain across the province, I think.
Understood. And well, I'm grateful to hear that the harvest experience was good on your farms, and I'm thankful to you and all the farmers in Canada who worked so hard on those long days during harvest to get that grain in out of the rain and into our handling system. But I also know that farming in a lot of ways doesn't stop. You get the crop off from this year's production, and I imagine you're thinking ahead to next year to 2026. Um, Josh, what is a winter wheat farmer doing now that the last year's crop is in the bin?
Well, at this point in time, actually, Leif, we're I would say seriously looking into 2026 because we're actually planting winter wheat now, and I have winter wheat that is actually very nicely emerged and growing already. So, we have plants that are maybe 10 centimeters, 5 to 10 centimeters tall at this time and growing very well. We've had very warm conditions until recently to get that established. And while in our area, wheat planting is probably mostly wrapped up, as we go further south, they're still planting wheat. And it's funny, I'm actually surprised at how much wheat seems to be going in the ground. The price isn't maybe where farmers would like it to be on a global stage, but still growers in Ontario are planting quite a significant amount of wheat because conditions are so good at the moment for doing that, with being still a dry harvest and dry climate. It gives us that opportunity to plant that wheat into ideal conditions. And if Mother Nature is kind for the next about 5 to 6 months here, we are looking at still another good wheat crop, hopefully growing into 2026.
That's great to hear. Wheat is really one of the foundations of Canadian grain agriculture, and I think it speaks to its ongoing success that farmers continue to choose to plant it and grow it. For you, Scott, what does post harvest field work and activities look like on your farm?
Yeah, we had a really nice fall. We had a harvest that I think wrapped up fairly early in the province. Every area was done probably by the end of September. There's a few areas that are just finishing up here in October. Fields are dry, so we're actually prepping the fields for next year. There's some heavy harrowing. There is some tillage work going down. Not a lot of seeding in Western Canada just due to the weather. There's I think mostly everyone is just kind of getting those fields ready so that when the spring comes next year, we can get into those fields fairly early. And I'd say on our farm, we are about half done prepping the fields for next year. So a few more days, maybe another week, and we're looking forward to taking some rest and maybe getting that grain moved into the elevator now that it's all in the bins. So yeah, that's what we're doing.
Well, that makes sense, and I'm glad that harvest was completed early enough that you're able to do that prep work and set yourself up for more success in 2026.
Yeah.
Well, thank you both for joining us, and sharing the stories about how 2025 growing season went for you, and I know that our customers and stakeholders around the world will be interested in this story, and looking forward to more of the outreach from Canada as we go. But hearing that for your farms, the growing conditions were positive with good yields and good quality is really fundamental. Canadian wheat grown by farmers like Scott and Josh are known for its high quality, its cleanliness and consistency. And we know that the hard work that they do and the regulatory standards that we have in Canada allow our customers to trust the quality of the wheat shipments and know that it'll meet their expectations. For us at Cereals Canada, our team will be meeting with exporters and producers on a regular basis to hear about the quality of the crop and do our post-harvest analysis. Right now, our technical team is milling wheat and doing quality assessments that will form the basis of our outreach later this year. In fact, let's hear more about the quality with our next presenter, Lindsay Boyd.
Hello, my name is Lindsay Boyd, and I'm a technical specialist at Cereals Canada, where part of my role is to coordinate the harvest assessment program. Cereals Canada supports our members, customers, and the cereals value chain through our milling, analytical, baking, past and extrusion, and Asian end products technical laboratories located here in downtown Winnipeg. Our team's technical expertise provides valuable insight to the wheat crop quality each year. As our team works to analyze the wheat from this year's harvest, it is my pleasure to share some early insights and observations on this year's wheat quality. Today, I will be discussing Cereals Canada's Harvest Assessment Program and providing a first look at the quality of this year's wheat crop. Each year, Cereals Canada evaluates the milling properties, flour and semolina quality, and end product quality of the newly harvested wheat crop from Western Canada. This is the first year that Cereals Canada will also be analyzing wheat grown in Eastern Canada as part of our annual harvest assessment. The 2025 crop year marks a milestone for Cereals Canada, an organization that has been analyzing Western wheat quality for over 50 years. For the first time, through a partnership with Grain Farmers of Ontario, the Cereals Canada technical team will analyze the quality of both Western and Eastern wheat classes for its harvest assessment program. The Western wheat classes evaluated are grown in the Prairie provinces, Alberta, Saskatchewan, and Manitoba, and the Eastern wheat classes evaluated this year are grown in Ontario. The Eastern Wheat Harvest Assessment is in collaboration with Grain Farmers of Ontario. Grain Farmers of Ontario works with grain elevators across southern Ontario to collect samples for its wheat harvest survey. Samples of 4 Eastern wheat classes, including Canada Eastern Soft Red Winter, are collected. Cereals Canada prepares composites of each of the classes from these samples that are representative of this year's quality. The CESRW composite is prepared using samples from the blue outlined region on the map in southern Ontario. This year, for CESRW, majority of the crop is grading number 2 or better, with protein expected to be in the range of 9.0 to 9.5% on a 13.5% moisture basis. Our technical team is currently in the process of evaluating the Eastern wheat harvest samples for milling performance, wheat and flour quality, and end product quality, and will have more results to share during our new wheat crop webinars in November. For the Western Wheat Harvest Assessment, Cereals Canada partners with 9 exporters to obtain representative samples of each wheat class, CWRS, CWAD or Quad, and CPSR, and create commercially relevant composite samples. This ensures the composite quality is reflective of the quality that customers of Canadian wheat will purchase over the upcoming crop year. Cereals Canada staff have weekly update calls throughout the harvest season with individual exporters to hear up-to-date comments on harvest progress and crop quality. Here are 2 maps of Western Canada showing the regional boundaries we use to create the composite samples. The map on the left shows the regional boundaries used to create the CWRS composites. An Eastern and Western composite will be made to account for any differences in growing region and better reflect the quality of wheat shipped from the Eastern and Western ports of Canada. The Eastern composite is made up of CWRS from the Eastern growing region, which is shaded in blue on the map, and the Western composite is made up of CWRS from the Northwest, Southwest, North Central, and South Central growing regions, or the unshaded area on the map. Our prairie composites are prepared from all growing regions in Western Canada as shown on the map on the right, and it's used for CWAD and CPSR composites. A number 2 CWRS prairie composite will also be prepared. As of September 30th, harvest in Western Canada is ongoing and the samples are arriving at Cereals Canada for assessment. The quality discussed today is based on preliminary comments from our discussions with exporters. A complete assessment on this year's quality will be presented during our 2025 New Wheat Crop Report webinars in November, once all the analysis is complete on CWRS, CWAD, and CPSR composite samples. For CWRS, we are hearing the crop has good quality with the majority grading number 2 or better and an expected wheat protein content range between 13 and 14% on 13.5% moisture basis. For CWAD, we are hearing majority of the crop is grading number 3 or better with an expected protein content range between 14 and 15% on a 13.5 moisture basis. For CPSR, we are hearing the crop is mostly grading number 2 or better, and the expected wheat protein content range is between 12.5 and 13.5% on a 13.5% moisture basis. As mentioned, these are preliminary estimates of what we are hearing about wheat quality. There may be slight changes to these numbers as harvest progresses. We will continue to consult with exporters as harvest progresses in Western Canada to ensure this year's composites will be commercially reflective of the export quality that customers will receive. Over the next 6 to 8 weeks, our team of technical experts at Cereals Canada will be receiving wheat samples from Western Canada to evaluate this year's wheat crop for milling properties, flour and semolina quality, and end product quality. Analysis of the wheat crop from Eastern Canada is already underway and nearing completion. The full quality assessment of this year's crop will be available in the 2025 New Wheat Crop Report on the Cereals Canada website, cerealscanada.ca, in November. Look for the webinar links on the website and in the customer newsletter to register for the 2025 New Wheat Crop Report webinar. Please stay connected with Cereals Canada. Scan the QR code and enter your email address to register for our customer newsletter. The newsletter will provide you with updates on the Canadian wheat crop, training opportunities at Cereals Canada, technical support information, and future webinars. Thank you.
Join us for the 2025 Wheat Crop Report. You can sign up at cerealscanada.ca.
Please make plans to join Cereals Canada and the members of the Canadian Cereals Value Chain for the 2025 New Wheat Crop Report webinars. The 2025 New Wheat Crop Report for customers in Asia and the Middle East will be on November 18th at 10:00 p.m. Central Standard Time. Our experts will be sharing quality and functionality data for Canadian wheat, and interpretation will be available in Mandarin, Japanese, and French. The 2025 New Wheat Crop Report for customers in Europe and the Americas will be on November 19th at 8 a.m. Central Standard Time. Our experts will be sharing quality and functionality data for Western Canadian wheat classes, as well as Canada Eastern Soft Red Winter, and interpretation will be available in French, Spanish, and Italian. Registration for both webinars is now open at cerealscanada.ca. We will also be traveling in market to present the new crop report throughout the months of November, December, and January, and look forward to seeing you in person. We will be sending out invitations to our live presentations in November. Once again, if you have any questions about the information presented in this webinar or about the services provided by Cereals Canada, please send them to us at info@cerealscanada.ca. Thank you for watching and have a wonderful rest of your day.